Hi, this is Nicker from OnlyFabs. Join in with the Fab Five, Don and James. We're here to talk about Christmas time, and the interesting part that we had to say about this video is that, of course, everybody said it has a large swath of wish list, but my idea was let's make a video and actually say if card X is in Everfest, dive on this hero. So there's something new for each and every hero, and there's one Fabled, there's a Skullcap and two other legendaries, and a swath of Majestic. So I think the power level for each and every class will be definitely there. And James White is really good at throwing curveballs. And Sweeney is here in our hearts. He was here for the entirety of our thought process, but not for recording. So next time, buddy. The class breakdown with 8 vanilla classes that don't double dip, not counting shapeshifters. So there are already 6 talents counting lightning, ice, and earth as a talent. And James, you actually had something interesting. Where did you hear that about what James White said about?
Yeah, there was an interview, I forget which channel it was, in which he stated something along the lines of they wouldn't revisit any of the existing talent for a certain period of time. And I may be making the period of time up, but in my brain, I'm sure he said something like 4 or 5 years due to the cycle of other talents and things they want to release into the pool. So something along the lines of we won't see much revisiting of the existing talents for quite a substantial period of time.
Mm. I'm actually looking forward to playing a Shadow Ninja, so you bumped me out, but okay. um, well, we can keep you talking with regard to Dorinthea. We had a discussion with what we want to see, and it was mostly 2 Henderson reprise. How come?
Yeah, so I guess for Dorinthea, there's been some testing around axe
Axe.
variants,
Yeah.
etc. But if you look at her core hero ability, it really is focusing on two-handed single attack weapons to get lots of utilization from swinging with that weapon multiple times.
Yeah.
So maybe potentially within the new set, we get something around a new two-hander weapon that can potentially see people moving away from Dawn Blades.
Hmm.
And I guess the other option is, different or more engaging cards attack reactions with the reprise keywords, because that's the interesting thing when you're playing with Dorinthea.
Yeah.
Some people will take interesting to say frustrating, some will say interesting to say it's a very skill intensive game to think through what they could have in their hand when it comes to reprise.
Yeah.
But they're the things that I really think could add more power level to Dorinthea
Yeah.
when we're talking about new design space for cards.
I'll just scoot you over also a bit. I'm just changing the way you look on screen, well, but only better, only for the better. So Don with Katsu, you had some interesting points with regarding to being less transparent. Actually, this was Sweeney, but you do a good you do a good Sweeney, Don.
I don't really, but I think cards that make sure that you can get go again, so without actually needing the card. So maybe an equipment piece that enables combo line X without the actual card, or an entirely new combo line, or maybe cards that add to a certain combo line. So that
Yeah,
is
and
the design space I think they should get into.
yeah, and actually the what would make it more toolboxy is this combo fixture, right? If you have card X and you tutor the last line of the combo, but it says that forego the whelming gust wave and just you
Yeah,
start
yeah,
everybody. Yeah.
exactly. Or a card that fixes multiple combo lines
So that would make
in
you
one.
dive on Katsu and actually maybe ignore the more controlling playstyle, have it be more aggressive with toolbox answers versus other classes with difficult on hits for control class or aggro classes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Bravo, okay, we'll stick to Dawn, right? So
Yeah, I think when we're talking about Bravo, we need cards that have good crush effects. Um, More red cards that we want to play in the deck, or maybe cards that make the hero go more wide. But I'm not sure if that is the design space they should get into. Um, Otherwise, we need boots, boots,
yeah,
boots, boots.
yeah, yeah, boots, boots, boots. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it maybe not being so weapony was what I wrote down with some more attack actions, but yeah, it needed to be costing 3. But I really like this tempo approach of pushing out and dishing out damage. But the Guardian Hero design and type, and what makes it fun and enjoyable for other people is it being
Yeah.
weapony. So maybe a
True, but
good one-hander, another one-hander, right?
that'd be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna take place in the circus, the whole set, and Bravo. Where does he come from?
Yeah.
So the hot take from you is that the Fable card will be a Bravo specialization.
Yeah, call it.
Call it,
It's gonna happen.
call it. Okay, you'll get a cookie if you're right. So with Reiner and Ragnarok, I'm quoting Eric here, the Baalhuis Brute, which actually blue 6 attack or riot. And how will that be balanced? I don't know, but it's just general 6 attacks in general. And a buddy of mine, Marcel, who enjoys the claw builds, and he actually said something that doesn't make it lean so hard on the rolling of the boots, right? So actually, like a hit and run card. This is actually not so much the equipment, but cards that will enable it, because there are already interesting options for the brute hero with the weapons that they have. But maybe a good chest would be a legendary chest
Yep.
piece. So Kano, James.
Yeah, I guess one of the things we talked about was like what direction does LSS want to go with Wizard in general? You know, we saw Wizard come out, it was really hyped, a lot of people really loved the class, but at the moment it's not received any attention. So, you know, do LSS want to continue with Wizard, or do they just leave it as an experiment and pass it away? I think if we're thinking about cards that could help Wizards, you know, it's very difficult to build something that is factoring in more opt or more arcane damage, because then potentially you might make it too broken, especially in the Blitz format. Classic Constructor potentially less so. So we were talking about things that maybe focus more on the defensive aspect of Wizards, that give you something akin to the runeblade barrier and runeblades, or more defense reactions that potentially give you more interesting ways to interact with how you're setting up your combo turns.
Yeah.
But effectively, they need to do something with Wizards, because at the moment it just doesn't receive the amount of attention it deserves, I think, because it's a great class.
Yeah,
A
it's
lot of people say that it's because it's too difficult and therefore people aren't willing to invest the time. But I think it's not that simple, right? I think it just needs some things tweaking a little bit to make it more competitive.
yeah, I know a weapon piece that actually allows you to play defense reactions without there's a deck building restraint in the class itself that doesn't allow for defense reactions. So if a weapon can smooth out this process, that you play singulos and such. Well, that's calling blitz, right? But in classic construction there may be some option, but whiffing from the top is just terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
for
need
sure.
Aether Conduit 2.0. That's what
Yeah,
you need.
Aether
Yeah.
Conduit, that's more like a runeblade weapon, right? With max damage. So actually, we discussed about it, and we will do the mob justice and not talk about runeblade. But I have one thing to say about it: that is the design space and how they have designed these heroes. They are pillars, and they do not overlap. So they share a theme, and that's the overcapping. That's a non-attack attack action theme that they have going on. But in essence, these heroes do not overlap. So whenever somebody will see a runeblade card and think it's busted, don't go on the internet and Twitter your mommies. I think it has received enough cards and it's sufficient, but that's all we have to say about Moonblade. But think about it, it's pillars, it's pillars. So Azalea, the bows make the class. So Don, how will it go be less reliant on arrows?
Less reliant on arrows. Well, we talked about a quiver for a second. Maybe that's not the answer right now, but um,
Wasn't it allies?
attacks. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was more thinking about allies, right? So have a pet companion is something typical for ranger, standard trope. But
Yeah. So a dog as a companion. I'm not thinking of a cat right now because that might be too cute. No, but maybe something we've seen it with 2 heroes right now, right? That can summon allies,
Yeah.
or so
Yep.
maybe that could be something interesting. I would be really hyped for that if Azalea has like a nice pet that after you played so many arrows, then it's still reliant on arrows. But then if you can get something in play that stays there for a bit, I
Yeah.
think everyone would jump into
Jump right
Azalea.
on it, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
actually there are quite a large amount of bows right now, but something for like Voltaire and the Death Dealer Snapdragon for Lexi, a second bow that would actually make for more interesting gameplay with Azalea instead of just okay, dominate arrow, dominate arrow,
Yeah,
dominate arrow.
yeah. Voltage strike thrice, for example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
full strike tries, but then Azalea. So for Dash, yeah, well, I'll take this one. Not that I'm so keen about. I haven't played Mechanologist in ever, but the interesting part would be items. So not so much equipment. Of course, equipment will always bring interesting gameplay options, especially if you're looking at the other weapon that isn't played. But more something to do with your instead of plasma purifier, right? Maybe what was the other weapon again, James?
Asthma barrel pistol or something, is that what it's called? I can't
Yeah,
remember what it's called because no one plays it. But like we said earlier, the artwork is sweet. It looks like a really fantastic weapon, but it's probably the only weapon that I can't even remember what it's called off the top of my head.
yeah.
Yeah, sent an item centered around the other weapon would be really interesting and would
Yep.
broaden the whole archetype.
Yeah, and we have an intermezzo with Kavdaen, and we can something merchant, right? So it's an interesting hero ability, and will probably could be playable with how control you could be. I know Don would be interesting, but it just needs something merchant, right? Because you can't play the Lost Prince. Yeah, you can play it, but
It's
Yeah,
not great.
maybe only a merchant weapon would suffice, right? So not a generic weapon. That's the only option right now. So a centered merchant weapon, a claw. I don't know. He has a mechanical claw arm, right? So that'd be cool.
yeah. You know, what does maybe it's a wallet and you can slap people with them and gain coppers.
Throw coppers at people. Yeah.
Well, coppers for damage, that would be cool. So Data Doll has one large issue at hand. James,
Yeah, so I guess the issue with Data Doll is just that it has 3 intellect. And I guess the intention from LSS was they deemed the hero power strong enough with the banishing of items that potentially offsets what you're losing in hand size. But actually, when it comes to gameplay, like just having 3 cards every turn really makes your turns backbreaking, especially if you then need to block, you're limiting your options. What can you pitch? What can you play? So we need potentially some item, equipment piece, cards that plays with that intellect level to potentially allow you to draw more cards or something that just assists the hero with its lower intellect value because the hero power itself is just not good enough in simple terms.
yeah, long story short, if something if items could block, if it's an equipment piece that make you block prevent damage with items, then you can mitigate this loss of intelligence.
Yeah.
And of course, Sweeney also said it. Towering Titan, who's absent but here in our hearts. An intellectual punishment in an IP 2 or 5 is a game loss.
Yep.
He made. You've seen it happen or happen in games he had played, and it was a loss straight out. So intelligence 3 is a really big punishment. I will take this one.
Go
A-
for it.
yeah, any unconditional go again, straight up tested in Kassai. Anything to do with copper, of course. I would like some variation on the headpiece. I think the core design of Kassai, as I play it right now, and most of the guys are in the Discord seem to agree is that you block with equipment and push all the damage with your hand as much as you can. Although you can, of course, still block 4, which is interesting with the dynamos and a card from hand, and then you suddenly, because these dynamos reset, I don't know if you know the cards, but dynamic dynamos, each and every time you swing twice, you can reset that counter on it. You just need to swing, not hitting. And this card alone made for Kassai to be playable in Blitz, because you, over the course of a game, you can block 4 or 5. So that's also something that, look out for this. If you saw the dynamos, you thought Dorinthea would be busted with these boots. It was Kassai who was pushed up a tier on the tier ladder in Blitz. So Kayo, maybe we should leave it as is. It's an ultimate pit fight hero. You can add 6 attacks, but what does it generally do? If there's an adult version, maybe you can have fun with it on a tournament and laugh your balls off each and every time you swing for 6 or swing for 12, but mostly leave it as is. Sorry for doing all the talking, but I had some interesting idea with Benji, which was I see a Mount Jimmy covered in mist, and then and then each and every attack would be below the 2, so that actually your the benefit is also made to a downside for your opponent, and electrified type damages, so that you can actually finish the game with 2 attacks. So if either of those cards are in Everfest Crucible 2.0, I would definitely test out Benji for maybe a meme deck, and if it's strong, you will notice it fast enough. Nothing to say about Ira. Nothing to say about Chain. Levia. Don, you heard me say it multiple times, but is it solvable?
Yeah, we discussed it. It's solvable. It needs another form of shadow puppetry to really set off the deck. It already has the Carrion Husk that helps, but maybe it's not enough as far as equipment goes. We also discussed like how can we maybe make sure that you only take half damage if you don't banish a card with 6 or more, so that during your end game it's not hit or miss, or it's less likely to not miss.
Yeah.
Because you die of blood depth way too often. So yeah, that's what we need. Another shadow puppetry.
And that's actually interesting, because now the one equipment piece that I'm thinking of that's not a shoe-in, that's the glove slot for Brute, right? So
Yeah.
But gloves are mostly damage manipulation.
Yeah, so far they are, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe it would be an interesting take if your opponent also takes the same blood depth damage, right? So if it's if you take blood depth, then sacrifice these gloves. So that's what would make me instantly not sell all my Brute cards. Yep. So if it's added damage would revolve around this blood depth mechanic, then that piqued my interest. And Baldwin, man. Oh, James, was it? Yeah, what did you say about it? Boring. Make tempo great again, right?
Yeah, the thing with Boltyn is, like, first and foremost, he is hands down the coolest hero. So I really want him to be fun. But so often, at least in my games where I've played him or have played against people, it tends to focus really, at least like the ones that I've seen perform well competitively, around those big Lumina turns, around those bigger beacon turns. And a lot of the charge cards that you're playing are just dull. Like they're not really fun to play with. Alongside the fact that a lot of the charge cards, due to the inherent cost of having to charge a card, right? I mean, pitching a card can give you 3 resources. Charging a card can only give you 1 resource. So it's inherently worse than having to pitch for something. Like that cost, alongside the fact that it's not very engaging, it just needs ways to get more tempo, potentially more cards like Lumina or like Beacon, or these stronger Boltyn cards. But also you have to then be careful to not make it too consistent in its huge combo turns.
Something. But if somehow you could charge and swing with your weapons to make even the hatchets playable, right? Because I've never even seen a list that plays the hatchets. I don't know
Other,
how that would
other
work.
than in draft or sealed, but other than that, then no, I've never seen a hatchets list either, to be honest.
So an equipment piece that would reduce the cost of well, actually that could be a majestic that actually reduces the cost and make you charge the cards that you play out, so that you can fill your soul and actually swing with your axes. Maybe that will make
Yeah.
for a playable version of. Yeah, I wanna. If I play a warrior class, I wanna swing with my weapons. And Boltyn, of course, he needs to charge. That's the mechanic. We're playing attack actions. It's a different take on warrior, but I would love to see for Boltyn to have it be working with either Raiden or the axes. And I have both
Yep.
gold foils, so it would be great for Christmas if one of those goes skyrocketing and I don't like the playstyle, and so can actually sell my flesh and blood cards instead of hamsteren. Prism. So Don.
Yeah, we talked about Prism. I mean, it has the least amount of cards, but it's such a fleshed out hero already. Um, what would make it interesting for it to get even better is maybe a couple of auras that cost less, are easier to play, or um, make sure that Iris of Reality becomes an actual playable card. And the thing is, it's also kind of an issue, whereas people build or they adjust their deck to play against Prism, which is kind of difficult for newly released cards.
Yeah,
So they really have to be cautious on
break that
how to
phantasm.
approach that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Although the interesting part now is Flesh and Blood kind of is like a polarizing game where if a hero is good, it pushes out other heroes. Because
Yep.
Prism was a boogeyman, and then Briar said no, and now we don't actually see Prism. Where I joked with Joost during nationals, our head judge, that Prism actually is the boogeyman, and the Prism players they didn't get far just because they were pushed out by Briar. So the Briar players or the Prism players were bitching about Briar, and then we were like, no, 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 you're the real boogeyman here, man. So it is a warping design, but Auras, I think, Spectra, of course, it breaks go again, but I would play an illusionist hero even if it was a young hero that has something more to do with Iris of Reality, because I like the Iris and it's an enjoyable playstyle, which James also seemed to agree with. Okay, runeblade. So James, what was it about lightning that you thought wasn't interesting on Lexi?
Yeah, I guess the interesting thing about Lexi that we've seen so far with the decks that have done well are focusing mainly on the ice archetype. And I know there is this supposed lightning deck out there that focuses on Death Dealer to push through a lot of damage. But I find a lot of the time when you're playing Lexi, and I'm sure it's the same with Oldhim as well with a lot of the ice cards, the elemental effects are quite dull. And one of the cool things about playing Ranger is, especially with Lexi, that turning of a card face up. I
Hmm.
think one thing that would be great is to have cards that interact with you turning a card face up, or the card themselves does something when you turn it face up, which is a core part of Lexi's design,
Yeah,
that you're turning cards over every turn.
yeah,
So if they could do something that interacted with that, that'd be great.
yeah. No, it's just like with Headshot and Rich Rider shot, right?
Yeah.
It makes for a deck, and if there are lightning cards that don't mingle too much, like the pillar design that they have in Flesh and Blood, don't mingle too much with Azalea, or maybe even do, but lightning cards flipping those actually doing something else like go again, which is doesn't make for interesting. I myself also I was ignoring Fuse altogether, but I was like, yeah, you can't ignore the hero power. But then I look at the hero power and I'm like, yeah, I just want to create frostbites and see how it goes from there.
Yep.
Um, Don Oldhim.
Yeah, Oldhim. Oldhim is awesome, but what we need is an Earth Hammer.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so centered around ice right now, and I think there's no incentive to actually play an Earth version because the hammer does so much damage. Like also if you look at Guardian as a class, it's really centered around the weapon. And I would really love something that um, maybe if you hit with if you pitch an earth, you get a something like a spectral card that prevents damage next turn. Something like that. I think people would actually start building earth decks a lot.
Yeah, Thump
Yeah.
and Earthlong Surge just popped in my head, and I'm like, oh, I actually want to try it, but the hammer doesn't. It forces me back to ice. So
Yep.
Stalagmite is a two-handed Earth axe weapon hammer.
Maybe, hopefully, yes,
Eight
maybe.
flat attack. Just pitch
Yeah,
6 or something.
dominated every time.
Yeah, something like that. See, and that's the joke that we had. I was focused more on what cards we say. There's a lot of majestic, so the power level will be high. But in the end, it's the equipment, stupid. I'm quoting Bill Clinton here. He stated it's the it's the economy. But we want Everfest to deliver on equipment and not just for blocking like in Crucible. Of course, Courage of the Blade Hold, I play it just to block. Skeletas played in Briar just to block. Yeah, we want to have token weapons be pushed out, like James said. Something that can compete with Dawnblade and make Dorinthea fleshed out a bit in a different playstyle. Like the equipment makes for such an interesting item hunt, and just being able to do something different, like Don stated that with Earth Hammer, would make for an interesting Oldhim approach with where I can actually vary. So I don't know if you guys have anything to add to the general sense.
Thanks, Sweeney.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm just interested to see what this set's going to bring, right? I mean, remember when Crucible was first released, we were excited to see what it was going to do because it had that really broad spectrum in terms of what it was going to bring in terms of cards. And if you look now, a year and a half on, I guess we'll be at the point that we see Everfest. Not many of the Crucible cards still see that much play. Obviously, there are still some staples, but I'm hoping this set does bring a lot of good cards for the classes that are underplayed and that we see a greater variety of heroes in the meta moving forward.
Yeah, and especially with cards that actually make you Katsu sits down in front of you and you're wondering if it's aggro or control. But
Yeah.
if it is this Dawnblade Dorinthea or is it Axis Dorinthea?
Yeah.
And halfway through you know it, you've been scouting the tournament, but this is interesting. This adds a little spice and jazz to Flesh and Blood, which is an absolute amazing game. So Don and James, Sweeney, thanks for joining in. See you guys.
Thanks for having us, Nick.
Cheers.